This is Marketing Careers Uncovered, and I'm Dave Hayward. Another 2 weeks have gone by, and another superb guest joins us today. We'll be hearing from Marina Krivonossova. She's an exceptionally well-travelled Russian-American, based in the Netherlands, and is the founder of Retold, a B2B content marketing agency that specialises in helping brands transform their approach to content, or to use her own words, up their storytelling game. She's got loads of experience across digital marketing, content creation, and brand strategy. But as you might expect, we'll be getting under the skin of how she's made it this far, and some of the big wins and lessons along the way. So Marina, why don't you give us a little bit more on who you are and what you're up to right now?
Yes, I've been in the marketing space for about 8-9 years now. Just launched my own company, I think a little over a year ago now. All time has kind of blended together. We talked about that before the episode. But been over a year now running Retold, which is super exciting. I'm an expat living in the Netherlands. I was born in Russia, spent most of my time in the US. So really international background, and I love all things traveling. And when I'm not working, you can also find me baking.
So what's a typical day or week look like at Retold? Just give me a bit of an example of some of the clients that you work with and some of the kind of projects that you might undertake.
I feel like this is such a cliche to say as a business owner, but there's no such thing as typical. Some days I'll wake up at 10, some days I'll wake up at 6. You really never know what's going to happen. Sometimes I work weekends, sometimes I don't. But I spend a lot of time strategizing content, creating the content itself, and working on the distribution plan. So that can be anything from website copy to blogs, to social media posts, to video scripts, for anything, again, from YouTube to Instagram to LinkedIn to anything you can think of, anything to do with written content, strategy around it, and distributing it.
And any particular types of clients that you work with, any sectors, particular niches, or if I've got some money, can I hire you for anything?
I'd say it's basically the latter. And that's actually a huge part of why I wanted my own company, because I was working for all these different companies for generally shorter terms, because I realized, I don't know, maybe after a year and a half, that I wanted to do something different. I do find myself gravitating a lot towards tech companies, either software or hardware, just because I enjoy learning about those topics and kind of seeing the innovations taking place in those spaces. But for the most part, I mean, I've worked in travel, education, fitness, really any field you can think of. And that's, again, a huge part of why I love having Retold around, because I'm not committed to just spending a year and a half doing exclusively fitness, exclusively travel, exclusively logistics. I really have so many different clients and so many different niches, and it keeps every day exciting and interesting. And I'm always learning something new that I can apply from one space to another. And I love that.
So at this point, I usually ask people, what do you enjoy most about that? But I suspect you've already just told me that. So I'll skip through to my next piece. I'm always quite interested on taking the rough with the smooth. And what are the things that you find challenging or difficult about what you're doing right now?
I mean, again, this is a typical business thing. I feel like I'm never sure when or where I'll get my next client. When you're working a full-time role, you at least have an idea of, tomorrow I'll have a job. Next week I'll have a job, hopefully, unless there's a spontaneous layoff. And there's no such thing as stability no matter what you do. But for me, it's always a matter of, okay, I'm in a good place right now, but will I be able to sustain that in a couple of weeks? Because life is full of surprises and everything is always changing, and I don't know how it'll go for me. So that's the most challenging part, but I've just kind of learned to take it as it comes. Some months are better than others, and yeah.
So a bit of resilience is the order of the day here as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And you can't let the worst months kind of control your mindset around either yourself or your business. You have to take it as it comes. You have to accept that not everything will always be perfect and easy.
Going back to your very early beginnings, marketing wasn't necessarily the path perhaps you or your family expected you to take, was it? Take us back to your beginnings and where you all started.
Yeah, so I'm from a very STEM-oriented family. I think a lot of immigrants from my part of the world over in Russia can relate to that. My parents were both in the computer and mathematics space, so we moved to the US for my dad's computer-based job. And growing up, I was always expected to follow in his footsteps and my mom's footsteps and maybe kind of go in a different direction, but stay in the STEM field. So I was always pushed to be a programmer, an engineer, and maybe if I wanted to diversify the way they see it, become a doctor, a lawyer, something that's traditionally seen as prestigious. That's, again, very common in the Russian immigrant community, I would say, and just immigrants from that part of the world. But I had always been more interested in the creative space. So I'd been writing for as long as I could remember. And my family always supported me, but it was always the idea of, well, you can do writing on the side. I remember bringing up how much I loved writing when I was 14 or 15. I was really into mystery novels at the time. And I told my dad, and he was like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. That's something to do outside of your main job. And I was like, oh, like, I'm pretty sure like Stephen King and Sidney Sheldon weren't just doing this on the side while they were programming, but it'll take a lot to be one of the greats. And I understand that maybe that's not the path for me. So I kind of was like, okay, yeah, I get it. I understand. But my family had the illusion that corporate work equals stability. And they thought that following that path would be the best way to secure corporate work and in turn stability. But as time went on, I went down a lot of different paths. I thought I wanted to work in politics, which I did. I thought I wanted to work for an NGO. So I ended up jumping a lot in my education. I got a master's in political science. I almost got a bachelor's in economics, but I swapped majors with two classes to go. So a lot of drama around that, again, in my family and expectations that were set. But when I was living in the Netherlands and I was looking for, I'd say, my first full-time role in the Netherlands, I was kind of analyzing, what have I done? What am I good at? And I realized I'd been working in marketing for as long as I can remember without even realizing it. So for years, I'd been building websites for clients. I'd been working on UX. I was doing copywriting. I was doing email marketing. I was managing social media accounts of all kinds. And I was doing it almost on a full-time basis without even realizing it. But at the time, again, I had this drilled into my head that this is for now. This is just part-time work. It's not real work. But when I was in the Netherlands and my options were a little limited because I didn't have an EU passport and I didn't speak the Dutch language, I decided, well, let's try my hand at marketing in a full-time space and see what happens from it. And I moved through the ranks really quickly. Again, having had that marketing experience under my belt already without labeling it as such until then. And I realized that marketing is kind of the perfect space for me where I get to use my business knowledge, where I get to work a lot with people, which I enjoy doing. I get to do a lot of writing, a lot of planning, and helping others do the same. And I've been, doing marketing very consistently ever since. And now I have my own B2B content marketing agency.
So for a lot of people who go into this space organically, do some bits of UX, designing websites, putting together content. When you went full time into, okay, I would now call myself a marketer. Were you aware of any limitations that you might have, not having gone through a formal, this is marketing and how it all works?
So I'd say I actually had an advantage because a lot of people who go into marketing, they think that having a marketing degree and having read a textbook from 2009 is all they need in order to be successful in the marketing space. But that is so not the case. The real advantage that I had is that I was always learning on the spot. I was always on top of all the trends. I was seeing what's in the news, which courses are trending on different platforms for learning about it, like HubSpot. I was seeing what works on social media and what doesn't, what tracks in SEO and what doesn't. So I really think that I actually had a huge advantage there. And I was always quick to fill the gaps because, again, I didn't see that, having a formal education in marketing is what you need to excel. I always thought you just need to be a quick learner. You need to be adaptable. You need to understand the ins and outs and where you're lacking, where you have those gaps. And you just have to learn from every source possible around you.
Now, I am one of those people who read said textbook in 2009 and did a marketing degree. And you're quite right. On one level, I found a real disconnect between some of the structure and theory, which is still, I would argue was still somewhat useful, but didn't particularly serve me that well in terms of some of my earlier roles, where it was, well, actually, I need to understand platforms and execute really well. I'm not being asked to come up with some highfalutin strategy here. Firms need someone who can actually hit the ground running and get stuff done. So it did take me a little while to catch up to that, frankly.
And I understand that. I think everyone has an advantage. You just see more of the advantage of where you came from, or like where I came from, where you come from based on your own experience. And I think that going to school for that, you learn a lot of the things that me as a novel marketer, I would say, who had a degree in something completely different that I see. And I'm like, what? I remember at one point, a colleague of mine, at which point I'd already done marketing for a good 4 or 5 years. She was talking about like tofu and bofu and mofu. And I was just sitting there like, what is happening? Like, I have no clue what she's talking about.
I know one of them and I can eat it, but what are the other two?
I was like, bofu and mofu. And I was just sitting there like, yeah, totally, I'm aware. And ultimately, I did know exactly what she meant. I just didn't know the terminology. So I think a lot of it having to do with terminology and kind of the formal wording you miss out on when you don't get that formal education. But it's something that you kind of pick up as you go.
Imagine that same person going and talking to loads of senior stakeholders, and they're not having a clue what she's talking about. And I think we as marketers have really got to do quite a lot of work in terms of knowing your audience and using the language in which people talk and the space that they operate in. So if you're talking to senior leadership, use commercial language and focus rather than throwing ROAS and tofu, mofu, and all this other nonsense out there, because you'll just lose people, right?
Exactly. And that's how I felt. I was like, I know what she's talking about and I know what she's trying to say, but like, the acronyms just aren't the move. And some people love it. Sometimes you'll end up in an environment that I find usually more corporate, where they're like, yes, this makes it clear that the person knows their stuff. But realistically, that's not the important part.
So while we're on words and names which get thrown about, there's two I wanted to pick on today with you. Storytelling and authenticity, they're two words that get thrown around quite a lot. I guess what I'd be quite interested to understand from you is, what do those words actually mean to you in the work and the way that you operate? And how do you approach those things with clients who, again, may look at those things and go, well, authenticity, what does that actually mean when we get down to it?
So I'm not going to lie, when you said we're going to talk about two acronyms today, I was sitting here like nervously sweating, like, what if I don't know the acronyms he wants to talk about? So storytelling and authenticity. I was ready to be like, time out. But storytelling and authenticity, I'm happy to talk about those. So they are words that are thrown around a lot. And I mean, you and I met on LinkedIn, where we both see those words every day, dozens of times, and they lose meaning, right? So I'd say when it comes to me and my clients, storytelling and authenticity are super important. Storytelling is just sharing a story in a way that doesn't feel technical, that doesn't feel convoluted, that doesn't feel boring. So you can talk about the same topic in different ways. You can present it as a story, or you can present it as a series of facts or a series of figures, whatever it is. And storytelling is what grabs your audience's attention. It's a hook that makes them say, oh, I want to keep reading. It's kind of the meat of the story that makes them think, oh my gosh, like so much is happening, or my emotions are grabbed. I'm feeling this as a person. This resonates. I want to keep going. I want to see how this ends. And then at the end, everything that's tied together, the conclusion, the CTA that makes them need to do something or feel the draw to do something or make them want to do something, it's all part of that story. So that's how I see storytelling. It's taking a topic that's, otherwise easily presented in a very, very simple and mundane way, and sharing it in a way that gets people's emotions and gets them involved as people. And when it comes to authenticity, I'd say that's a part of storytelling. Again, sharing it in a way that's human and real and doesn't feel structured and templated. And now with the rise of generative AI, authenticity is huge, because the same story that can be told by a generative AI platform, it will lack all authenticity, all creativity in a way that human stories simply won't, as long as that person, stands true to what they're sharing.
I guess it's also looking at it as authentic to the brand that you're creating and working with. There's no good being super witty and off the wall. And then the first time I get on a call with you, we're actually all very serious people, and we speak in acronyms, and that's the way we do it, because it's just completely wrong, isn't it? You almost feel duped by
Exactly.
catfished even.
Exactly. I like it. But yeah, authenticity doesn't have to be just staying true to yourself. It's staying true to, the tone of the brand or the company you're working with, kind of maintaining that consistency that's real.
Yeah, so if you wouldn't normally use rocket ship emojis across everything, then if generative AI is going to spit that out for you, perhaps don't take that and weave it into your brand. It's the smell test, isn't it? It's something's quite off here, the uncanny valley. I know this just doesn't feel right for the organization that's doing that.
Exactly. Also, Gen AI stole rockets from me. I had to delete those from everywhere on my LinkedIn page because everyone started saying, oh, that's a telltale sign of ChatGPT. And I was like, aw, my rockets. I love my rockets. So that's a very sensitive topic.
I did used to use rocket ship emojis. It was in my name on LinkedIn because it was a surefire way to tell when I was getting loads of messages through. I wanted a quick and easy way to tell, right, who's just using some service here just to spit out loads of automated messages versus who's actually taken the time to write me a proper message.
It took rockets from you too, Dave.
I know. I'm gunning for OpenAI now. And do you think people get a little bit too tied up in knots with storytelling? I've seen lots of examples where, if we take Simon Sinek, starts with Y, where he drew the magic circle, and in the middle of the business, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and everyone thought they had to be like Apple all of a sudden, and started crafting these epic tales about purpose and all these other bits and pieces, but actually forgot to tell the audience what you actually do and the problems that you solve. It's really easy to go right the way to the other end of the spectrum and start doing perhaps too much storytelling. Is that a thing?
I'd say it depends how you view storytelling. So I think you can tell the story of your product or your service the same way you can tell the story of your mission or your purpose. So as long as you're not focusing too much on the wrong story, I would say you can't go overboard with it. It's just about telling that right story. So as you said, a lot of people are like, oh, we have to, share all these crazy details about why we do what we do, how we got here, but share the story of your product. What makes your product unique, like genuinely unique, not some generic nonsense like, oh, we go the extra mile. No, the actual story of what you do, why you do it, and why it resonates with your audience. I think it's just about using storytelling as an effective tool.
I'm still waiting for the brand that puts their purpose as being to make a shit ton of money. No one has gone out with that yet.
Are you sure? Maybe they just didn't take off.
Quite possibly, but I'd like some real radical candor around that. Or shareholder value is our purpose.
You could be the first.
And possibly the last as well.
Yeah, there you go. I'll write your memoir for you.
What have you seen and latched onto as the essential skills, attributes, or behaviors that have helped you get ahead? And do any particular standout moments spring to mind that have formed your views?
I'd say that over time and working with different people, both in the marketing department of companies and just with sales and other departments, I've realized that in order to succeed as a marketer, you have to be on top of what's happening. You can't fall behind, and you can't stick to your old ideas of, oh, but this worked 5 years ago. This worked when I was in college. This worked at my first job. You have to be really open to change, and you have to seek out that change and that growth. So you have to say, yeah, this might have worked before, but I'm not emotionally attached to it. I'm very open to trying something new and using, novel techniques to see how we can be better. I think what a lot of marketers get wrong is sticking to what used to work and refusing to try something new because it scares them, because it's intimidating, because it's just too different. And in saying that, I'm not saying you have to hop on every new trend, on every new technology, because that's, the other end of the spectrum. That's overwhelming and overbearing. But I'm saying be very open, be curious, be diligent about learning, basically. I think that's something that I learned from the best people that I've worked with through all departments. And another one that I would say is some of the marketing leaders I worked with, or some of the CEOs of the companies who I worked under as the head of marketing. They taught me that people skills are huge in everything you do. We had, at one point, without naming names, a very technically experienced CEO who I was working for, who was just a master of his field. But ultimately, he ended up getting pushed out of the C-suite just because his people skills were so lacking. People had a hard time communicating with him. They had a hard time working with him. They had a hard time understanding him and getting their own thoughts and ideas across to him. And again, a technical expert, just a true genius, but that didn't end up being enough. And that really kind of tied the idea together for me that you have to keep those people skills learning and evolving. You have to be capable of working effectively with people if you want to be successful in business and in marketing.
And I've learned that one hard way myself as well. I think earlier on in my career, I was pretty peed off that an external consultant got brought in to review marketing and other functions as well. And said individual went round and essentially said pretty much the same as what I was saying. And I was like, oh, well, what an absolute waste. And I got pretty upset about it. But it's only in the last, maybe perhaps sort of 5, 6 or so years, really appreciated that actually it's not just about the messenger, it's the message and those relationships as well. Frankly, he just did a better job of communicating that than I did at the time, and you live and learn.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic learning experience because, yeah, indeed, you realize that it's not about just what you say, it's about how you say it.
On a practical level, you talked about keeping up with new approaches. It can feel like a full-time job in itself, sorting out the guff from the game changers. So have you got any particular secrets to share on how you manage to keep ahead, where there's just an absolute fire hose of stuff coming at us day in, day out?
Yeah, so I think this takes a little while to build. And I really feel like I'm plugging LinkedIn right now, but LinkedIn has just been a phenomenal resource for me to learn from experts in the field. I'm not talking about, just reading news articles and hoping that the information is relevant, but really following and connecting with the seasoned, experienced marketers who've been kind of in the trenches for a while, who are on top of what's happening, sharing real case studies of what works and what doesn't. And again, it takes some time to figure out, is this person really aware of what they're talking about? Or are they just buying followers and pumping out nonsense? So that is a process and there's no shortcut there. But once you kind of curate your feed in that sense, I'd say a good 70% of the time, you have very solid people to learn from. So every time I go on LinkedIn and I'm just scrolling my feed, not for too long, maybe 10, 15 minutes while I'm just grabbing a snack or something, I'll end up getting 1 or 2 useful nuggets of information that I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that. There's people who share valuable tools, valuable resources, not plugging themselves, but just saying, hey, here's a tool I tried, really worked for me, really recommend it. And things like that make me go, oh, I should try that. I trust this person. They've established themselves an authority to me, and I'm curious to see how that'll work for me. So I'd say in terms of learning, that's kind of the most effective thing that I found.
Perhaps you could use it as a good opportunity to connect to people outside of your chosen sector, or people perhaps who are specializing in different areas. Yeah, I think the danger sometimes with these things is that we connect with and look at people who seem similar to us. And actually LinkedIn sometimes itself promotes that with people with similar interests to you. Well, I don't want the similar interests. I want the people with radically different opinions and experiences. And I think your time box there is quite important at 10, 15 minutes, because it's far too easy to go down a rabbit hole and then realize you've been scrolling through for an hour each day and you're toast.
Absolutely. And I've been there. I think that's also the learning curve where you're like, okay, I can't do 3 hours every day. That's unsustainable, unproductive. It's overwhelming. But then you kind of learn the ins and outs of the platform. So whether it be searching by keywords, searching by regions, searching by people's headlines, things you're interested to learn about, and you get better at it. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So I'm at a point where I'm quite comfortable going on for just, 10, 15 minutes and being pretty confident that I'm going to learn something interesting today.
Found two nice ways, though, to completely cut out people who offer no value to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
My first one is anyone who posts a video or selfie of them on a private jet in the bin.
True.
And the second one is anyone who asks you to put some stupid word in the comments box to receive their a link to their course or PDF that outlines exactly how they've made 20 million pounds. Things like growth or mindset. Again, get them in the bin, and your feed will be much, much clearer.
That's very true. In all fairness, I used to do a thing where I had a little PS, and I was like, if you want my free content marketing calendar, DM me. I don't even remember what the word was, but it was like, DM me this quick word, because I realized people were DMing me, hello, Marina, may I please get a copy of your content calendar? And I was like, I'm going to save you the time. Just send me one word and it's yours. But that wasn't to get comments on my post. That was genuinely DM me this thing to make your life easier. So that's a little asterisk that I'm like, I didn't have bad intentions.
I think I can give you a pass on that one for sure.
Good. Thank goodness.
So tell me about setting up Retold. Why did you do it at the time you did it? And how do you stand apart from a crowd and win clients in an area that's really, really, really crowded, from freelancers to really large agencies? There's no shortage of content marketing talent, right?
Well, I think I'll go a little backwards there. But I don't think there's a shortage of any career field people right now. I think there's a ton of programmers and engineers and writers and marketers, even doctors. I have a friend who finished med school who can't get a job right now. Isn't that crazy? With how insane lines are for doctors and how hard it is to get service, even doctors can't get jobs easily. So I think it's a common misconception that, you're going into marketing, how are you going to stand out? No matter what you do, you're going to have to fight to stand out. So kind of ending on that and going back to the beginning, I wish I had a super phenomenal planning story of how I started my own company, but that's not at all what happened. I'd always known I wanted my own business. It's always been something that I've talked about, again, maybe kind of in different lines of work, everything from a bakery to my own publishing house to a whole lot of other things. But I always knew I wanted my own business. But at the same time, I still had that idea in my head that a full-time job is stability. You want to be employed and maybe do a side hustle on the side. So I was always conflicted. And I never felt a good time to just say, okay, throwing away my full-time job, trying something new, taking a chance on myself. Until I believe it was September 2023 that I went to a marketing conference with a connection from LinkedIn. He was speaking there. He offered me a free ticket because he noticed I was local. And we became friends very quickly. And we were talking after one of the conference days. And I was like, I'm not happy in my job. I don't say it out loud often, especially to someone who I just met, but I'm not happy. And he was a new business owner, and he was kind of asking me well, why? What don't you like? And I was like, I don't know. The clients we work with are cool, and I like my colleagues a lot, actually. I really do. I like going to the office even, which is so rare for me. I like the CEO. I like my manager, but something's just off. And he goes, I think you don't like working for other people. And I was like, yo, how do you know my dark secret? And he was like, have you ever thought about starting your own company? And I was like, yeah, but excuse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he was like, well, you can always keep making excuses or you can just go for it. And then we just went to get coffee and we talked about travel and other random stuff, but I could not stop thinking about that. And I got home, I remember that night very late, and I went to my husband and I was like, what if I started my own company? Just what if I did that? And he was like, I wouldn't be surprised. He's like, I've always thought you'd end up doing that. And I was like, really? How interesting. And the next day I called my mom and I was like, what if I started my own company? I'm just kind of spitballing here. And she was like, I think I'm going to cry. And I was like, oh no, she hates the idea. And she was like, I'm so proud of you. I always thought I could see you doing this. And all these people around me who saw something that I didn't even fully see in myself kind of made me think, okay, maybe I can try it. And my contract was just expiring.
Do you expect that level of response, particularly from your family? Because you've gone from, okay, the realm of sort of proper jobs to this marketing thing to now I'm going to try and start my own business from the ground up, going further and further away from perhaps what was envisioned for you right back at the beginning. So were you surprised to hear that response of actually, yeah, go for it?
Maybe yes and no, because my idea came about very spontaneously, as I said. So I didn't know if they'd be on board with my spontaneity because I'd always been more spontaneous than they had ever been. But at the same time, their main concern, everything really tied to the fact that they were worried that I wouldn't have money if I didn't do what they thought I should do, that I wouldn't have stability, that I wouldn't have a house, you know? But then when I started doing the things I wanted to do and I got a house and I was traveling all the time and I was kind of building that stability they saw for me just in a different way, they realized, okay, she's going to figure it out. No matter what she does, she's going to figure it out. So it doesn't really matter anymore if she's a programmer or a travel influencer or anything else. So yes and no. But yeah, and I think within 2 weeks after realizing my contract at work was about to expire and I was set for renewal. But to me, that was kind of like a clean break of saying, I'm not quitting, I'm not getting fired. I just don't want to renew my contract. So I saw that as an opportunity to say, okay, well, let's do that then. And even the CEO of the company where I was working, I told him all of this. And I was so nervous. My heart was racing. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And he was just sitting there like very peaceful. And he goes, you need to be more excited. This is what you were meant to do. And I was like, even he's supporting me. Like, what are the odds? So that was really nice. I had a very supportive network. He was very happy for me. He's like, it's a shame to see you go, of course, but I get it. You got to do what you got to do. So yeah, I think within a month, I had launched my own company. I went from, I think I'm going to renew my contract full time to I'm registered now at the Chamber of Commerce. I have a website, I have an offering, and I'm already selling my services on a couple different websites. So yeah, that was the transition for me. And that's where I'm at now.
How long did it take for you to get your first client through the door? Do you remember that moment when you got your first sale in?
I feel like this is the anticlimactic response. Yeah, before my company was even launched, I knew I had a client, basically. That's where my network really comes in handy. There'd been somebody who wanted to work with me for a couple of years, but there was no opportunity. So as soon as I decided to launch, I DM'd her and I said, hey, if you're still interested, I'm still interested and I'm available now. And we had scheduled a call 2 days maybe from then. And by the time my company was launched, we were working on our first project.
That's the right way around to do it, really, isn't it? You don't have to wait to have the logo of the shiny site or even the narrative and suite of services. Yeah, you can use those networks and people that you know. But if you think about setting up something in 4 or 5 months' time, you can start those conversations now, can't you? You don't have to wait.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I always say, my network that I had already built up at that point was a huge advantage. I'd never sold my services before on LinkedIn, but I was having conversations with people. I was building those relationships and I was still establishing my authority as a marketer, even when I was at different companies. So when I launched my own company, there was, I'd say maybe a small handful of people who were like, oh, I've actually been wanting to work with you. So this is a great opportunity. So I always encourage people, start building those relationships before you need or want anything from people. You just want to have those built. You just want to know people and you want to be known.
And what does that look like in reality, that sort of building relationship? What type of things do you do to build a positive relationship with someone?
Well, I comment on their content, which is, I think, the easiest one. So when I see a post that resonates, something I find interesting, I'll leave a comment that goes beyond just great post or thanks for sharing, because those are so useless. But really starting a conversation, really letting them know that I value what they're sharing. And that'll sometimes turn into them commenting on my posts or us talking in their comments. And maybe eventually we'll start DMing. Some people like it more, some people like it less. But just kind of just being known beyond just, oh, that's, a person in my LinkedIn feed. Being known as, oh, that's Marina. She really likes to bake. She made a strawberry shortcake that she was really raving about. She's been marketing for nearly a decade. people get to know you based on those little exchanges and little conversations. And I mean, the first exchange we had, you had a little funny typo in there. And I was like, okay, Dave, with a funny typo. That's immediately, I was like, yeah, we had that fun exchange. So that, I don't know, that made me think of you kind of in a lighthearted, positive way that might have not even happened if we had exchanged just formally and kind of in a business sense. So you never know what'll happen when you just send that message.
I think I offered to poop in your inbox, which I most definitely did not do.
You're like, disclaimer, it didn't happen.
It sounds so straightforward, doesn't it? Being a normal human being and talking to people like you would talk to someone who you met at an event or at the pub or at a family gathering. But in the age of AI comment on this, it's one of the worst applications of distance I've ever seen. Particularly on LinkedIn, as we're talking about it. Mm-hmm. This redraft with AI. Why on earth? Why on earth would I want to take my perhaps slightly off the wall sense of humor and completely sanitize it?
Yeah,
that's not going to help, is it?
No, absolutely not. That's we come back to being authentic, being your true self as you normally would be. That's what's going to help you stand out. That's what's going to help you build relationships, and also approaching conversations and people without an agenda. Sometimes you get a message and you're immediately like, oh, 2 messages from now, they're going to pitch to me. You never want to come off that way. Some people are just paranoid. I'm a little paranoid. But for the most part, you want to come off as genuine and actually be that way. So people don't expect something malicious from you or expect that you're going to try to push for a sale 2 messages from now.
And you need to get comfortable as well with the fact that some people aren't going to like you. Some people aren't going to like my sense of humor. Some people might even deem me unprofessional in some sort of way. And I've got quite comfortable with the fact that I don't care. If you don't like me, cool. I'm really not going to lose any sleep over it at all. I did when I was starting out. I go, oh God, I've got to behave in this particular way and use these particular words, and it's exhausting.
Yeah, I've definitely gone through that as well. I remember my first LinkedIn post, as you mentioned, sanitized is a fantastic word, because I was kind of just, shoving away my personality, the humor that I would use, and making these just really dry business posts. And some people loved them, but I realized the people who really loved them were not people that I wanted to engage with. Like, they were just the really, hardcore business professionals who believe LinkedIn is business only. You can't show your personality. You can't be yourself. You have to sanitize kind of that image you offer to the world. And I was like, oof, I don't want to be that.
So looking back now, what's the success that you're most proud of?
I'd say it's what I mentioned earlier about taking a chance on myself, even though I didn't have a really well thought out business plan of 100 pages and a solid idea of what I wanted to do. So I'm really proud of how quickly I went from, I think I want to start my own business, to here's the Retold logo website offering, and I already have my first client. I'm really proud of how I managed to turn that around. And despite being really stressed and really nervous, I didn't back down. I'd say that's what I'm most proud of.
Any hard lessons that really still stick in your mind to this day?
Yes, my first client that I got did not work out as well as I had thought. They ended up not paying me everything they had owed me. They ended up changing their mind about a lot of the deliverables I was offering. And there was just so much not going right that I expected would go right. And I think the biggest learning there is not everyone's going to love working with you, and you're not going to love working with everyone. Sometimes you go into collaboration really, really excited and positive, and a couple weeks in, you realize, oh, this ain't it. This is not what I thought was going to happen. And again, there was money lost. There was some sleep lost. There was some tears shed. But it was an experience, and I realized very early that you kind of have to prepare for the unexpected. The people who seem perfect might not be as perfect as you think, but there's always going to be another chance, another client. So just be resilient, basically.
Did that change the way in which you both assess potential clients as they come in or work with them on a regular basis? Did you start to put in perhaps more systems and controls as you went?
I'd say it made me more cautious about saying yes to everyone because at the beginning, of course, I was very excited to just have a client or have multiple clients to work with. But I very quickly went from that to, is this actually sustainable? Am I the right partner for you? Are you the right client for me? So I became a lot more diligent with doing my research and kind of vetting clients before, or vetting prospects before converting them into clients. Because ultimately, a relationship that's not positive, it's going to be stressful for me, it's going to be stressful for them, and nobody's going to be happy. So I became more comfortable with saying no to people if I realized, well, there's just not a fit here.
And what's next for you and Retold? Where do you want to get to? And have you got a plan for getting there at all?
So I'm not taking the approach a lot of people take in that, I want to grow this many percent, I want to grow to this many whatever employees. I don't have very big growth ambitions for my company in the sense that I wanted my own company so that I could be independent. I never want to hire anyone to work for me. I never want to have a physical office. I don't want to give myself responsibilities that aren't valuable to me. So my reason for having my own company is to work for myself comfortably anywhere in the world with the people who I think I can really help and who I enjoy working with. So that's just what I want to keep doing. I want to have more clients who come back to me. I want to have more clients who are referring their friends and colleagues to me because they think that a collaboration with me could prove beneficial. But I have no intense growth ambitions, I would say, because, yeah, to me, having my own company just means having that independence to live life on my own terms.
It's really good that you're so clear about that. Because I think a lot of people can feel that pressure to, okay, I've got my own business. I now need to grow. And actually, that doesn't always need to be the case.
No, and yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people kind of dive into that because they think, well, others are doing it, and people keep asking, what's next, what's next, what's next, and they don't know. And I think you don't have to know. I think you're allowed to just write it out, do what's comfortable for you, and adjust things as you realize, well, this isn't going great, let's adjust.
Absolutely. So finally, I've got my classic question. What's the best piece of career advice you've received, and what would your advice be for someone looking to get ahead?
The best piece of career advice I've received is don't be afraid of trying something new, even if you feel like you'll kind of be starting over. So just because you've been in a career for a long time, or just because you spent your whole education time studying one thing, it doesn't mean that's what you have to do until the day you retire or the day you die. Again, I got my master's in political science, and at one point it felt like, okay, well, now I have to find a career that kind of fits under the political science umbrella. No, there's always a way to learn. There's always a way to step into a junior function to try something new, learn from peers, go to events, network, even get a different degree. If that's what you're really feeling, if that's what makes sense, there's always room to try something new, no matter how old you are. And the people in my life who've inspired me the most are the ones who've done that not just in their 20s and 30s, but well into their 40s and 50s.
And that feels like an absolute perfect place for us to finish on there. So thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks to you for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe for future updates, leave a review, or share with your friends and colleagues. See you next time.